Picture this. You're walking out of the grocery store. You check your receipt, and suddenly it hits you. You forgot to scan your store loyalty card. You drive home, you unpack the bags, and that one tiny missed discount completely ruins your entire mood. You feel like you just failed. But why? Because literally we're talking about saving exactly $2.14. That's it. But it eats at you. It is a tiny, almost completely meaningless amount of money in the grand scheme of your life. Yet your brain reacts to it like it's a massive financial disaster. It creates this visceral frustration that you just cannot shake. Meanwhile, sitting right there in your driveway as you unpack those groceries is a car with a $680 monthly payment. A car that, if we're being totally honest here, you absolutely cannot afford. You're stretched so incredibly thin that you are literally one minor emergency away from total panic. And yet, you're furious about the $2. Okay, let's really dive into this. Why exactly do our brains hyper-focus on tiny, insignificant savings while happily accepting massive, life-draining financial leaks? Look, this isn't just some quirky habit. This is the cheap mentality in action, and it is bankrupting you in ways you don't even realize. Because here is the raw truth. Being cheap is an emotional reaction rooted in fear. It's not a mathematical calculation at all. Let me give you the perfect example of how this fear completely hijacks our logic. I call it the cheap gas trap. You're driving and you see a station selling gas for $3.89, but another one 15 minutes across town is $3.79. So you make the choice to drive across town just to save 10 cents a gallon. Seems super responsible, right? Well, let's break down the math. You burn a gallon of gas getting there and back. Plus, you lose 30 minutes of your life. If we value your time at just $25 an hour at your job, that's $12.50 of your life that you are never, ever getting back. When you run the actual numbers, you just spent $14.79 in lost time in fuel just to save $1.50. You quite literally paid over $12 for the privilege of feeling like you saved money. And this brilliantly illustrates why being cheap is a psychology problem, not a math problem. A cheap person's brain only asks one single question: how much does this cost right now? Every dollar leaving their hand just feels like a defeat. But there's an invisible cost here that is actually far, far worse than the lost $12. It's called decision fatigue. I want you to think of your brain like a computer. You only have a finite amount of cognitive RAM available every single day. Every time you calculate the per-ounce price of generic pasta sauce or hunt for cheap gas, you rapidly deplete that RAM. Your cheapness is acting like a cognitive virus. It is literally draining the mental bandwidth you desperately need for life-changing choices. Think about it. When you waste 70% of your daily processing power deciding whether to save 30 cents on paper towels, and then another 25% agonizing over whether you deserve a $5 coffee, what is left? Almost nothing. You have zero mental energy remaining for the decisions that actually move the needle in your life. Should you negotiate your salary? Should you launch that side business? Should you learn a new high-income skill? You can't. Your brain is simply too exhausted from doing grocery store math. So we have to stop the bleed right now. Here is a behavioral rule that will instantly reclaim your mental bandwidth. If a purchase is under $20 and you have the cash in the bank, just buy the one you want and move on. Stop debating it. Just let it go. You absolutely must save your brain power for the $20,000 decisions, the car you buy, the house you choose, the career moves you make, because that is where wealth is actually built or destroyed, not in the paper towel aisle. Now, you might be wondering, why is it so incredibly hard to just buy the $5 coffee and let it go? Because being cheap is deeply rooted in our past. It's very often a scarcity trauma response. Maybe you grew up watching your parents fight over money, or maybe you graduated right into a brutal recession. Your brain learned to hoard resources just to survive. And sure, that behavior kept you safe back then, but it's keeping you stuck right now. An abundance strategy looks at money completely differently. Instead of hoarding resources out of fear, you start seeing them as seed money to be planted, knowing that calculated risks beat guaranteed stagnation every single time. Section 1. The invisible social penalty: how saving money actually destroys your network. Being cheap isn't just an internal struggle. It actively leaks into your environment through a totally invisible social penalty. Obsessing over pennies destroys your relationship capital. It isolates you from the exact people who could help you level up. Think about that person who always splits the restaurant bill to the exact penny, the one who undertips the server or shows up to a party empty-handed. They honestly think they're being super smart and financially responsible, but that $20 you just saved on dimmer, it just cost you a $100,000 job referral. Why? Because you bought a reputation. People always remember how you made them feel. When big opportunities pop up, those doors stay permanently closed to the cheap person. Meanwhile, generosity and occasionally picking up the tab generates tens of thousands in unexpected opportunities. And then we get to the most dangerous, irreversible form of being cheap, refusing to invest in yourself. Consider the massive, painful gap in these choices. A cheap person skips a $150 dentist cleaning to save money, totally ignoring a cavity. 2 years later, they're paying $4,000 for an extraction and an implant, not to mention the physical agony and missed work. Or they refuse to drop $500 on an online course to learn a high-income skill. By doing that, they completely miss out on $30,000 of freelance income they could have easily made over the next year. This refusal to invest extracts a catastrophic physical and financial toll over time. Notice how this scarcity mindset literally infects the words coming out of our mouths. Cheap people always say, "I can't afford that." It's a total declaration of powerlessness. It's victimhood vocabulary that programs your subconscious for inadequacy. But a wealthy mindset, it says, "I'm choosing to allocate my resources elsewhere." Look, it is the exact same decision not to buy something, but one is completely helpless and the other is an empowered strategy actively looking for a return on investment. Section 2, the wealthy operating system, shifting from defense to offense. We need to upgrade your mental software to the wealthy operating system. It is time to pull yourself out of that scarcity trauma response. We are moving from playing defense with your money straight into the empowerment of strategic resource allocation. Here's the framework that makes that shift possible. I call it the 3-question ROI test. Before you reject a purchase because it feels too expensive, ask yourself these 3 things. 1, will this save me time? 2, will it increase my earning capacity? And 3, will it prevent a much larger expense later? If the answer is yes to any of these, then a $1,000 ergonomic office chair that saves your back or a $50 ticket to a networking mixer, those aren't expenses. They are high-yield investments brilliantly disguised as spending. Because here is the reality check that completely shatters traditional personal finance advice. You cannot shrink your way to wealth. Cutting your expenses has a hard ceiling. You can only reduce your spending so much before you're living in a cardboard box eating dry ramen. But your income potential, that is practically unlimited. So that highly repeated advice about skipping your daily $5 latte to become a millionaire, yeah, it's mostly garbage. It keeps you bailing water out of a sinking boat with a teaspoon. Which leaves us with one final, undeniable question. Are you playing defense with pennies, or are you playing offense with strategy? Being cheap isn't just a habit, it's an identity. But it's an identity you can absolutely choose to shed today. Audit your spending, stop sweating the small stuff under $20, and start focusing your newly reclaimed mental energy on the thousands of dollars that could be entering your life. If this explainer completely changed how you view your bank account, hit subscribe and drop a comment below on the one penny-pinching habit you are dropping right now. See you in the next one.